After I made my first video, I have gotten the same comments from at least a couple of people. What about the Opel? You didn't mention Opel. You always complain about Opel. Well, it is true that I have opinions about Opel, so here's what I think about Opel drivers. They're unremarkable. Yes, that's it. I don't think Opel drivers really stand out for the better or for the worse. With the exception of maybe early 2000s Corsas, but that's pretty much Yaris territory, as are most small cars this age. See my first video if you don't know what I mean. The link will be at the end screen. Now as for the cars themselves, yes, I do have opinions, but they're not quite straightforward and have shifted a lot during the years. Let's go back to the 90s, the years of my childhood. My aunts and uncles still remind me of how well I knew all the car brands and models. Opel to me was just another brand, but I knew pretty much all of their models. Finland has always had quite the old car base, so most of them were from the 80s. I remember seeing e-cadets everywhere but had no real opinion about them. In the early 2000s, I was in my teenage years. People my age started getting their licenses and those 80s cadets were popular. This was about the time when they started getting properly ruined by fresh drivers, and I started seeing them as old beaters. My dad having a similar opinion about the brand didn't really help. He and my uncles have often said that in their youth, all Opels were pretty much rust buckets. Nowadays I rarely see any e-cadets. I guess most got neglected and rusted away or were just driven to death by youngsters. In 2005 though, I got my driving license so I could actually start driving and finally form some real opinions. Since then, I've driven a few and it's gotten slightly better. I will just list the common ones through the years and share my opinions. I've got a sixth real one, but it's left out. Maybe I should get it back. No wait, this is a bad angle. Let me try the other one. Alright, there we go. So first up, Cadet E. Saw lots of these in my childhood. I thought they were somewhat ugly, but nowadays I actually respect their uniqueness. I've never driven one. I rode in a few though. A friend of mine had one in his teenage years and that was a total beater. Omega A. I thought it was just a big Opel. Never driven one and can't remember riding in one. Vectra A. I saw lots of these too. Very unremarkable and boring looking. Never driven one. Astra F. These were everywhere. Drove one. Worst car I've ever driven. Ugliest car Opel ever made as well, especially in hatchback form. The facelift looked slightly better. Wagon wasn't too bad. Omega B. Held in high regard by many. I've never driven one, but I probably should. Looks okay at least. Vectra B. Looks a lot better than the previous one. Never driven one. Have ridden in a few though, pretty unremarkable, but okay. Astra G. Also looks way better than the previous one. The early 90s was apparently just a passing phase of ugly Opels. I have driven a couple of these, they're pretty okay. Very similar to Corollas of the same era. I just never understood why anyone bought these when Corollas were similarly priced and drove just the same, and were also more reliable. Much more reliable. Vectra C. Bold new styling, terrible interior. Never driven one. Astra H. Same new style language as the new Vectra. I think these are generally an eyesore, but one of my previous co-workers had a wagon with coilovers and bigger wheels, which made it look much nicer. I've never driven one of these, but I have ridden in a few. Felt quite harsh. The interior is horrible also. Makes me think of those old black and white science fiction films. You know, where they predicted the future. Like, this would be what a 1950s person would think cars would look like in the future. Sharp, angular, hard plastics. Feels very industrial and not a very nice place to be. Insignia A. Once again, completely new styling. Looks overly bloated in my opinion. Never driven one. Astra J. Styling cues from the Insignia but works much better in this compact form. I have driven one and it's the best Opel I have driven so far. Feels much sturdier than the older ones. And having a turbo probably didn't hurt. Made it actually feel a bit Saabish. The interior is also nice. I'm glad they moved away from the horrible design of the previous one. Astra K. A pretty basic update. Never driven one. Have ridden in a taxi a few times, and I think it was okay. Insignia B. This may surprise you. I think the wagon version of this one is one of the most beautiful wagons ever made. It got slightly worse when facelifted, but still nice. I've never driven one, but I might have ridden in a taxi in a slightly inebriated state. Astra L. So PSA bought Opel and now all the models look the same, except in different sizes. Love the front, don't care for the rear. Never driven one. So yeah, I can't really have strong opinions about the 80s ones because it was mostly external impressions. The 90s sucked, the 2000s were underwhelming, and the 2010s were pretty nice. Nowadays, I'd say my opinion is pretty neutral. I have no experience of the latest ones under PSA and Stellantis, but the reviews have been quite underwhelming. Well, at least the styling is distinct, not within the range itself, but at least from other brands. So there you have it, a random stranger on the internet sharing his opinions and a bit of nostalgia. If you disagree, that's okay. These were opinions, not facts. Take care now. And there you have it. One random guy on the internet telling you about his opinions on a car brand that